When friendship meant nothing. I should have known something was wrong when Sarah started using the word friend, like it was a lifeline instead of an insult. We were sitting in our kitchen, the one we'd renovated together 2 years prior, arguing over subway tile versus hexagonal because that's what couples do when they're happy, when they think the biggest problems in life involve grout color. And she was crying in that careful way women cry when they've rehearsed the scene in their head a dozen times. Mascara intact. Voice steady with just the right tremor. She'd placed her wedding ring on the table between us. A tiny golden referee in a match that was already over. I think we should separate, she said. But I don't want to lose you completely. We could still be friends. Good friends. Friends. The word landed between us like a stone in still water, and I watched the ripples spread across everything we'd built. 8 years of marriage, 10 years together total, and she wanted to downgrade us to friends. As if we were a software update nobody asked for. I should have said no right there. Should have told her that you don't get to be friends with someone whose life you're actively destroying. But I was 36 years old, a data analyst who spent his days finding patterns in numbers, and I'd completely missed the pattern forming in my own home. So instead, I nodded. I actually nodded and said, okay, yeah, we can be friends. Her shoulders sagged with relief, and that's when I really knew, that this wasn't a sudden decision. This was planned, calculated. She'd been afraid I'd make things difficult, and my agreement had just made her life exponentially easier. Thank you, she whispered, reaching across the table for my hand. I let her take it. I even squeezed back. You're such a good person, Marcus. This doesn't have to be ugly. But it was already ugly. I just couldn't see it yet. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself with sirens and flashing lights. It arrives quietly, in small inconsistencies you dismiss because you want to believe in the story you've been telling yourself. Like how Sarah had started going to yoga classes 4 nights a week 6 months ago. How she'd suddenly needed a new phone because her old one was acting weird. How she'd stopped initiating sex but would participate with the enthusiasm of someone checking off a grocery list item. I'd noticed all of it. I'd just chosen to interpret it as what? Stress? A phase? The natural evolution of a long-term relationship? I was a data analyst, for Christ's sake. I identified anomalies for a living. But when it came to my own life, I'd been running on corrupted data for months, maybe longer. We agreed she'd move out first, into her friend Natalie's place, temporarily, until she found her own apartment. Natalie Chun, her best friend since college, the one who'd been her maid of honor at our wedding, the one who'd sat in this same kitchen countless times, drinking wine and laughing at my jokes, calling me her favorite husband, because I actually cleaned and cooked. I'd always liked Natalie. She was sharp, funny, brutally honest in a way that felt refreshing after years of corporate politeness. Natalie's great, I said when Sarah told me the plan. She'll take good care of you. Something flickered across Sarah's face then. Not quite guilt. More like concern? But it was gone before I could analyze it, replaced by that carefully maintained expression of grateful sadness. She really is, Sarah said softly. I'm lucky to have her. The first week after Sarah moved out, I functioned on autopilot. I went to work at the tech firm where I analyzed user behavior data, finding patterns in how people clicked through websites, predicting their next moves based on their digital footprints. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could predict the behavior of anonymous strangers but had completely missed my wife's affair, because that's what it was, obviously. You don't just wake up one day and decide to end a decade-long relationship unless there's someone else warming up in the bullpen. I didn't ask about him. Didn't want to know. That was my first mistake. Sarah texted me every day. Good morning texts. How are you texts. Funny memes about the absurdity of adult life. Photos of sunsets. It was like we were dating again. Except we weren't dating, we were friends. This was the new normal she wanted, and I was going along with it because... Why? Bride? Denial? The pathetic hope that if I played along with her fantasy of an amicable split, she might realize she'd made a mistake? How's the friend thing going? My buddy Jake asked one Thursday night at Murphy's Bar, a dive bar 3 blocks from my house that served decent whiskey and minded its own business. Fine, I said, staring into my bourbon. Great. We're very friendly. That's fucking weird, man. Yeah. You know she's seeing someone, right? I did know. Of course I knew. But hearing it out loud made it real, made it a fact I had to acknowledge rather than a suspicion I could pretend didn't exist. I figured, I said. And you're okay with this friendship bullshit? I wasn't. But I couldn't articulate why I was going along with it. Maybe because rejecting her offer felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that we'd never mattered enough to transition into anything other than strangers. Maybe because I was still hoping for something I couldn't name. It's civilized, I said finally. Jake snorted. Civilized. That's what we're calling it now. He didn't understand. Nobody did. They all thought I was being a doormat, letting Sarah control the narrative, turning me into her emotional support ex-husband while she explored her new life. And maybe they were right. But I kept thinking about something my dad had told me before he died. The high road is lonely, but at least you can see where you're going. I was taking the high road. I was being mature. I was being a friend. And then, 3 weeks after she moved out, Sarah called at 2 in the morning. Marcus. Her voice was small, frightened. I'm sorry to wake you, but my car won't start. And I'm in a bad part of town, and I didn't know who else to call. I was out of bed and pulling on jeans before I'd fully processed what she'd said. Because that's what friends do, right? They show up. They help. I drove 15 minutes to a sketchy parking lot outside a 24-hour pharmacy in the South End, where Sarah stood next to her Honda, arms wrapped around herself against the October chill. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Short, expensive-looking, not her usual style. Her makeup was smudged, and she smelled like wine and perfume that wasn't hers. Thank you for coming, she said, and she actually hugged me. A real hug, her face pressed against my chest, her hands gripping the back of my jacket. I felt my body respond despite everything, my arms coming up automatically to hold her, my chin resting on top of her head like it had 1,000 times before. What happened? I asked. I was out with some people from work, lost track of time. The car it won't turn over. I checked under the hood. Battery terminals were corroded but fine. Tried jumping it with my cables. Nothing. The starter was shot, which was weird because we just had the car serviced 2 months ago. And nobody had mentioned any issues. I'll call a tow, I said. I'll take you home. To Natalie's? Yeah. Where else? Another flicker of something across her face. Right? Yeah. Thank you. We drove in silence for the first few minutes, the radio playing low, some late-night jazz program that felt too intimate for the moment. Then Sarah spoke. I miss you, she said quietly. Is that okay to say? I know it's probably not fair, but I do. I miss talking to you. I miss your voice. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. We talk every day. It's not the same. It's all surface stuff. I miss the real conversations. The deep ones. You left? I reminded her. And I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. You don't get to miss me and be the one who left. I know. You're right. I'm sorry. She was quiet for a moment. Then, are you seeing anyone? The question caught me off guard. Why would I be seeing anyone? We just split. It's been 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I repeated. Yeah. Plenty of time to process the end of a 10-year relationship and jump into something new. I just wondered if you had someone to talk to. I have Jake. Jake tells you to hit the gym and fuck your way through your pain. She wasn't wrong. That had been Jake's exact advice, word for word, delivered with the confidence of a man who'd never been married and didn't understand that you can't just gym away a decade of shared history. We pulled up outside Natalie's building, a nice renovated loft in what used to be a warehouse district and was now full of artisan coffee shops and boutique yoga studios. Expensive. Much more expensive than what Natalie could afford on a graphic designer's salary, but I figured she had family money or something. None of my business anymore. Do you want to come up? Sarah asked. Natalie's probably asleep, but we could have tea. Talk. And here's the thing. I almost said yes. I almost followed her up to that apartment because I missed her too. Missed the weight of her presence in my life. Missed knowing that someone knew all my stories and habits and stupid jokes. I almost walked into whatever trap she was setting because I wanted to believe that friends could mean something real, something that might save us. No, I said instead. It's late. I should go. She looked disappointed, which should have felt good, but just made me sad. Okay, thank you for coming, for being there. That's what friends do, I said, and the word tasted like ash in my mouth. I watched her walk into the building, the security door clicking shut behind her, and I sat in my car for a long moment before driving away. Something was nagging at me, a pattern my brain was trying to identify but couldn't quite parse. The dress, the perfume, the car breaking down in a bad neighborhood after a work event that ran until 2 a.m. Data didn't lie. People did. I started paying attention after that. Really paying attention the way I did at work when I was trying to identify anomalous behavior in user data. And once you start looking for patterns, you can't unsee them. Sarah's texts came at odd times, late nights, early mornings, never during normal business hours. She was always vague about where she'd been or what she was doing, and she kept calling me for things that friends might do for each other, but that ex-husbands definitely shouldn't. Helping her move furniture, fixing her laptop, explaining her taxes. Each time I showed up. Each time I told myself I was just being decent, being a friend. Jake was less diplomatic. She's using you, man, he said over drinks at Murphy's. She gets to have her new life and still have you as backup for all the husband shit she doesn't want to deal with. Maybe I'm using her too, I countered. Maybe I like having an excuse to see her. That's even sadder. He was right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Because admitting it meant acknowledging that our friendship was a fiction we were both maintaining for different reasons. Her because it was convenient, me because I was pathetic. Then came the day I met Natalie for coffee. It was early November, 6 weeks after Sarah had moved out, and I was grabbing lunch at a cafe near my office when I saw her sitting alone by the window, working on her laptop, a half-eaten croissant on a plate beside her. I almost walked past, almost kept going because what would we even talk about? But she looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine, and waved me over. Marcus, hey, sit please. I'm dying for a reason to stop staring at this logo. He said. We ordered coffee, and then we talked, really talked, the way I hadn't talked to anyone in weeks. She asked about work, about how I was handling everything, and there was something in her eyes. Understanding? Sympathy? That made me tell the truth instead of the sanitized version I'd been giving everyone else. I don't think I'm handling it well, I admitted. I think I'm pretending to handle it, which is different. That's most of life, Natalie said. Pretending until the pretending becomes real. Does it become real? Sometimes. Other times you just get better at pretending. She was easy to talk to in a way that surprised me. I'd always liked Natalie, but she'd been Sarah's friend, part of the package deal, someone I saw at parties and dinners but never really connected with one-on-one. Now, without Sarah between us, there was something different, something lighter. Can I ask you something? I said. And you can tell me it's none of my business. Sure. How is she? Really? Natalie's smile faded. She looked down at her coffee, and I watched her choose her words carefully. She's figuring things out. That's a diplomatic answer. It's a true answer. She met my eyes. She talks about you a lot. She feels guilty. She should. Yeah. Natalie paused. But guilt doesn't change anything, does it? It's just another feeling we use to make ourselves feel better about feeling bad. I laughed despite myself. That's depressing. I'm a realist. She grinned. It's my least attractive quality. We talked for another hour, until Natalie had to leave for a client meeting and I had to get back to the office. As we parted ways on the sidewalk, she touched my arm, just briefly, just a moment, and said, "You should do more things for yourself, Marcus. Stop being so available to people who don't deserve it." I thought about that conversation for the rest of the day. Thought about how easy it had been, how normal it felt to talk to someone who wasn't performing friendship or guilt or carefully managed regret. And I thought about the way Natalie had looked at me when she said Sarah talked about me a lot. Like there was more to that story than she was willing to share. That night, Sarah called asking if I could help her assemble some furniture she'd bought for her new apartment. She'd found a place, was moving out of Natalie's in 2 weeks. I'd pay for TaskRabbit, but it's so expensive, she said. And I thought maybe we could order pizza after. Catch up. I almost said yes. The word was on my tongue. Ready to launch, the same automatic response I'd been giving for 6 weeks. No, I said instead. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I think maybe we're not as good at being friends as we thought, I said. What do you mean? I mean, you call me when you need something, and I come running, and we call that friendship, but it's not. It's just you needing things and me being too weak to say no. That's not fair, she said, and there was real hurt in her voice. I thought we agreed. I know what we agreed, but I don't think it's working. Not for me. Another long silence. Then, quietly, are you saying you don't want to be friends anymore? I looked around my empty house. Our house, the one she'd left, and felt the full weight of what I'd been doing for the past 6 weeks. I'd been keeping her in my life in any way I could, accepting crumbs and calling it friendship because I was too afraid to let her go completely. I don't know what I'm saying, I admitted. I just know I can't keep doing this. Okay, she said, and her voice was small. I understand. I'm sorry if I never meant to use you. I know. Can we still text? Sometimes. Maybe. I don't know. I need time. She accepted that, or seemed to, and we hung up with the kind of awkward goodbye that feels like an ending even when nobody says the words. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt like I just failed a test I didn't know I was taking. 2 days later, Natalie texted me, "Heard you and Sarah had a thing. You okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Define okay. Fair. Want to grab a drink and talk about it? I said yes before I could overthink it. We met at a wine bar downtown, quieter than Murphy's, the kind of place where you could actually hear yourself think. Natalie was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, 2 glasses of red already poured. I pre-ordered, she said. Figured you'd need it. That obvious? Sarah called me crying after you guys talked. So yeah, pretty obvious. I sat down, took a long drink. The wine was good, better than what I usually bought, which was whatever was on sale at Trader Joe's. I'm guessing she told you I'm a terrible person. Actually, she said you were right. That she'd been using you and didn't realize it until you called her on it. Oh, yeah. Oh. Natalie swirled her wine, watching me carefully. She feels terrible, but she also feels relieved, which makes her feel even worse. Why relieved? Natalie hesitated, choosing her words. Because now she doesn't have to feel guilty about moving on. She wanted your permission to stop thinking about you, and you gave it to her. The words hit harder than they should have. Jesus. I'm sorry. That was harsh. No, it's true. That's what I did. Isn't it? I released her from guilt. I laughed bitterly. And here I thought I was standing up for myself. You were. Both things can be true. She reached across the table, covered my hand with hers. You're allowed to protect yourself, Marcus. Even if it makes her life easier. That doesn't make you weak. Her hand was warm and I didn't pull away. We sat like that for a moment and something shifted in the air between us. Something that had probably been there at the cafe, but I'd been too caught up in my own misery to notice. Can I tell you something? Natalie said softly. And please don't take this the wrong way. Okay. I never understood why Sarah left you. You're one of the most genuinely kind people I've ever met. You deserve someone who sees that, who values it. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just squeezed her hand and tried not to think about how this was the first time in months that someone had touched me with what felt like actual affection rather than obligation or guilt. We talked for 3 hours. About Sarah. About the divorce. Because that's what it was going to be. Even though we hadn't started the paperwork yet. About our lives and jobs and the small disappointments that accumulate into something heavier. And the more we talked, the more I realized that I'd been wrong about Natalie. She wasn't just Sarah's friend. She was her own person. Funny, insightful, surprisingly cynical about love but hopeful about people, which was a combination I found deeply appealing. When we left the bar, she hugged me goodbye, and it lasted a beat longer than a friendly hug should. Long enough that I felt her heartbeat against my chest. Long enough that, when she pulled back, we were both aware something had changed. "We should do this again," she said. "Yeah, we should. Not as friends. I mean, as friends, but not as Sarah's friend and Sarah's ex-husband. As us." "I'd like that," I said, and I meant it. I started seeing Natalie. Not immediately. We waited a respectable few weeks, went on careful, tentative dates that we didn't call dates until they obviously were. Coffee, dinner, a movie, long walks through the city where we talked about everything except Sarah. Until one night Natalie finally brought her up. "I need to tell you something," she said. We were sitting on a bench overlooking the river, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. "About Sarah. About why she really left." My stomach tightened. "Okay. There was someone else. Is someone else. His name is Derek. He works at her company. They've been seeing each other for about 7 months. 7 months. We'd separated 2 months ago, which meant she'd been with him for 5 months before she asked for the divorce, before she put her ring on the table and asked to be friends." "Did you know?" I asked. "When it was happening?" "Not at first. She told me about 3 months in. Swore me to secrecy. Said she was going to end it with you soon. That she just needed to figure out how. And you didn't tell me." "No, I didn't." Natalie's voice was steady, but I could hear the shame underneath. "She's my best friend. I thought, I don't know what I thought, that maybe it would burn out, that she'd come to her senses. I was wrong. I should have told you. I should have been angry. I should have felt betrayed all over again. But mostly I just felt tired. Why tell me now? Because I can't start something with you while keeping that secret. Because you deserve the truth, even if it hurts." She turned to face me. "And because Sarah's gonna find out about us soon, if she hasn't already, and she's gonna spin this like you moved on first, like you used me to get back at her. And I need you to know that's not what this is. Not for me. What is it for you? I don't know yet, but it feels real. And I'm tired of things that aren't real." I kissed her then. Not because I was trying to move on or get revenge or any of the other complicated reasons that should have been there. I kissed her because she told me the truth, because she was right there being honest and real when everyone else was still pretending. And because I wanted to. We told Sarah together, which in retrospect was either very mature or incredibly stupid. We met at the same cafe where Natalie and I had reconnected. The 3 of us sitting at a table like we were negotiating a business deal instead of confessing that the friendship Sarah wanted was already irreparably broken. Sarah's face when we told her, I'll never forget it. It cycled through disbelief, hurt, anger, and finally something that looked almost like understanding before settling back on anger. "How long?" she asked. 2 weeks, Natalie said. Officially. Officially. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What does that even mean?" "It means we've been on dates for 2 weeks. It means nothing happened while you and Marcus were together. You're my best friend." "I know. And you?" Sarah turned to me and her eyes were wet. "You said we could be friends. You said." "I tried," I said. "I really did. But you wanted me to be available for you while you moved on with Derek. And I can't do that." She flinched at his name. "Who told you? Does it matter?" "Natalie." Sarah looked at her friend, her ex-friend, with something like betrayal. "You told him. He deserved to know. It was private. Between us. You've been fucking your coworker for 7 months and sleeping in my apartment," Natalie said, and there was steel in her voice I'd never heard before. "I kept your secret as long as I could. But I'm not going to lie to protect you from the consequences of your choices. This is my punishment, then? You're dating my ex-husband. This isn't about you," I said quietly. "Not everything is about you, Sarah." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I can't believe this. Either of you. I thought we could be mature about this. I thought we could all be friends." "We were never going to be friends," I said. "You wanted an ex-husband who'd make your life easier while you started over. That's not friendship. That's just you wanting to have it both ways." "Fuck you, Marcus." The words came out sharp and mean, And I saw the real her underneath all the careful performance. The anger she'd been holding back, the resentment that had been building for however long. You were always so passive, so fucking understanding. It made me crazy. I needed space to breathe, to feel something other than your sad puppy eyes every time I walked through the door. Then you should have left sooner, I said, instead of stringing me along while you figured out your backup plan. She opened her mouth to respond, closed it, looked at Natalie. Are you really doing this? After everything? After everything? Natalie stood too. You've been lying to both of us for months. You moved into my place while you were sleeping with Derek. You used Marcus as your emotional support ex while you played house with someone new. And now you're angry because we found each other. He's my husband, ex-husband, and he was never really yours, was he? Not the way you wanted someone you could actually love instead of just tolerate. That hit something deep, because Sarah's face crumpled. For a moment I thought she might cry, really cry, not the performed tears from the kitchen. But she pulled herself together, grabbed her purse, and walked out without another word. Natalie and I sat in the sudden silence, and I felt the weight of what we'd just done settle over us like a shroud. That went well, I said. She laughed, almost hysterical.
Jesus Christ.
I just lost my best friend.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. She stopped being my friend months ago. I just didn't want to admit it. She reached for my hand. Are we terrible people? Probably. Does it matter? I don't know. Ask me in 6 months. But I didn't need 6 months to know. Because as the days passed and Sarah's angry texts turned into silence, and Natalie's stuff started appearing in my house, a toothbrush, a drawer, pieces of her life integrating with mine, I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. This wasn't about moving on. This wasn't about finding happiness after betrayal. This was about revenge dressed up as healing, about taking something from Sarah the way she'd taken something from me. And the worst part was that I didn't care. I didn't care that my motives were impure or that I was probably using Natalie the same way Sarah had used me. I didn't care that what we had was built on a foundation of shared betrayal and mutual convenience. Because Sarah had taught me something valuable. That friendship doesn't mean money, or help, or comfort. It doesn't mean showing up at 2 a.m. because someone's car broke down. It doesn't mean being understanding when what you really want is to scream. Friendship, real friendship, means telling the truth even when it hurts. Means seeing someone clearly, flaws and all, and choosing them anyway. Means accepting that sometimes love isn't enough, and kindness can be its own form of cruelty. 3 months after Natalie and I started dating officially, Sarah got engaged to Derek. She posted it on social media, a photo of her hand with a diamond ring that was significantly larger than the one I'd given her. Her smile bright and genuine in a way it hadn't been in years with me. The caption read, "Finally found the one." Natalie showed me the post, watching my reaction carefully. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. I felt nothing looking at that photo. No jealousy, no regret, just a distant sense of relief that it was finally, officially over. "Good," she said. Then, carefully, "I need to tell you something." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Sarah called me. Last night. We talked for about an hour. And she apologized. For everything. For using you, for lying to me. For expecting us both to just accept whatever she needed without considering what we needed." Natalie paused. She said she understood now. Why we're together. She said it made sense in a fucked up way. "What did you say?" I told her the truth. That I didn't start seeing you to hurt her. That I actually care about you. That you're a good person who deserves better than what she gave you. She looked at me. But I also told her that she's right. That there's something fucked up about all of this. That I don't know if what we have is real, or if we're just two people who needed to not be alone. The words hung between us, honest and terrifying. Because she was right. We both knew it. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I don't know. Keep going, I guess. See where this leads. Maybe it crashes and burns. Maybe it turns into something real. Either way, at least we're honest about what it is." "Which is?" "Messy. Complicated. Probably a bad idea." She smiled. but also the most real thing I've felt in a long time. I pulled her close and we stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Sarah had asked for a divorce, where she'd put her ring on the table and asked to be friends. And I understood with perfect clarity that this was the real ending. Not the separation. Not the divorce papers we'd finally filed. Not even Sarah's engagement to Derek. This moment of brutal honesty where two people acknowledged that they might be using each other but chose to stay anyway because sometimes that's all we have. The choice to keep going even when we don't know where we're headed. 6 months later, I ran into Sarah at a grocery store. It was completely random, the kind of coincidence that only happens in real life, never in movies because it would feel too contrived. We were both reaching for the same bunch of bananas, and our hands touched, and we both froze. "Hi," she said. We stood there awkwardly, strangers who'd shared a life, separated by 3 feet and an entire universe of pain and regret. "You look good," she said. "Happy. Thanks. You too. Congratulations on the engagement." "Thank you." She paused. "How's Natalie?" "She's good. We're good." "Good. That's good." She laughed awkwardly. "I'm saying good a lot." "Yeah." Another pause. Then, "I'm sorry for how I handled everything, for asking you to be my friend when what I really wanted was to not feel guilty. You deserved better. Thanks for saying that. Are you happy? Really?" I thought about it. Thought about Natalie and the life we were building, about whether it was real or just convenient, about whether it mattered. "I don't know, but I'm trying. That's something." She nodded. "Me too." We said goodbye, took our separate bananas, walked away in opposite directions. And I realized that this was the ending I'd been looking for. Not dramatic, not satisfying, just real. Two people who'd hurt each other acknowledging that hurt and moving on anyway, carrying it with them like scars that itch but don't bleed. That night, I told Natalie about running into Sarah. We were lying in bed, her head on my chest, my hand in her hair. "What did you feel?" she asked. "Seeing her?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." I paused. "I think I felt sad. Not for losing her, but for who we used to be. For the people we were before everything got complicated." "We were never uncomplicated," Natalie said softly. "We just pretended better back then." She was right. We had pretended. We were still pretending, in a way, pretending that what we had was simple, that it wasn't built on a foundation of broken friendships and convenient timing. But maybe that was okay. Maybe all relationships are built on something broken, and the trick is finding someone willing to help you pick up the pieces even when they know some of them will cut. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Telling me about Derek? Getting involved with me?" "Every day," she said. "And not at all. That doesn't make sense. Nothing about us makes sense. That's why it works." We fell asleep like that, tangled together in complicated truths and uncertain futures. And for the first time in a year, I wasn't thinking about Sarah or what I'd lost or what could have been different. I was just there, in that moment, with someone who saw me clearly and chose me anyway. But here's the thing about endings, they're never really endings. They're just pauses, commas in a sentence that keeps running whether you want it to or not. A year after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Marcus." Sarah's voice, but different. Strained. "I'm sorry to call. I know we don't talk anymore, but I didn't know who else." "What's wrong?" "Derek and I broke up. Called off the engagement. It's over." I waited. "I'm at Natalie's building. I came here because she was always the person I called when things went wrong, and I forgot that we're not friends anymore. But she won't let me up. She just buzzed down and said I should call you. So I'm calling you. And I know I have no right to ask. But, what do you need, Sarah?" "I don't know. I'm sitting in my car and I can't seem to drive anywhere. I can't go home. I can't call anyone. And I realized I don't have any friends left. I burned them all down for Derek, and now there's nothing." I heard the tears in her voice, the genuine desperation, and I felt nothing. Or maybe not nothing. Maybe pity. Maybe satisfaction. Maybe both. "I can't help you," I said quietly. "I'm not asking for help. I'm just asking. I don't know what I'm asking. You're asking me to be your friend again, to show up, to fix things. But I can't do that, Sarah. I don't want to. Silence on the other end. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. I deserve that. Yeah, you do. Natalie was right, she said. About everything. I used you. I used her. I thought I could have everything. Derek and your support and her friendship and no consequences. And now I have nothing. You'll figure it out. Will I? She laughed, bitter and broken. I don't think I know how to be alone, Marcus. I've always had someone. My whole life I've always had a backup plan, someone waiting. And now there's no one, and I'm terrified. Good, I said, and I meant it. You should be terrified. Maybe that's what you needed. To actually face what you did instead of having someone there to cushion the fall. That's cruel. It's honest. You wanted honesty, right? That's what friends give each other. Truth. So here's the truth. I don't care that you're hurting. I don't care that Derek left you. I don't care that you're sitting in your car outside Natalie's building having a breakdown. You made your choices. Live with them. I heard her breath catch, and for a moment I thought she'd hang up. But she didn't. You're right, she whispered. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry for calling. I'm sorry for everything. I know. Can I ask you one thing? Just one. What? Are you happy? With Natalie? Is it real? I looked over at the other side of the bed where Natalie was sleeping, her face peaceful in the dim light from the street. Was I happy? Was it real? Those were questions I'd stopped asking myself because the answers were too complicated, too tied up in revenge and convenience and genuine affection that I couldn't separate anymore. I don't know, I said finally, but I'm here. That's more than I can say for you. Yeah, Sarah said. It is. She hung up without saying goodbye, and I lay there in the dark, my phone still in my hand, feeling the weight of that conversation settle over me. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt vindicated. But mostly I just felt empty. Natalie stirred beside me. Who was that? Sarah. She was immediately awake. What did she want? Derek left her. She's alone. She called asking for, I don't know, absolution maybe, or just someone to be there. What did you say? No. Natalie was quiet for a long moment. Then, good. Is it? Good. What do you mean? I turned to face her. I mean, I just kicked someone when they were down. Someone I spent 10 years of my life with. Someone I promised to love forever. And I feel nothing about it. What does that make me? Human, Natalie said. She reached for my hand. It makes you human. And tired. And done with being the person everyone leans on while they figure their shit out. But what if that's who I am? What if being the person people lean on is the only way I know how to love? Then you need to learn a different way. She squeezed my hand. Look, I know this thing between us started fucked up. I know we're probably using each other in some way, whether we want to admit it or not. But at least we're honest about it. At least we see each other clearly. That's more than you ever had with her. Do we? See each other clearly? I see that you're kind but not weak. That you give too much but you're learning boundaries. That you're scared of being alone, so you settle for complicated instead of waiting for easy. She paused. And I see that you don't love me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But you're here, and you're trying, and right now that's enough. The words should have hurt. They should have felt like an accusation. But they just felt true. What do you see when you look at yourself? I asked. She smiled sadly. A woman who betrayed her best friend for a man she might not even want. A woman who tells herself she's being honest but is really just scared of being called out for her own bullshit. A woman who's settling for complicated. Because easy feels like a fairy tale that only happens to other people.
Jesus, Nati.
You asked. We lay there in brutal honesty. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of someone else's marriage and called it fate when it was really just timing. And I realized that this was the real ending. Not Sarah's call. Not her pain. Not even her absence. The real ending was this moment of clarity where I understood that I'd become exactly what I'd accused her of being. someone using another person to avoid feeling the full weight of their own choices. What do we do? I asked. I don't know. Stay together because breaking up feels like admitting we were wrong all along? Break up and prove Sarah right about everything? Keep pretending until the pretending becomes real. She turned to look at me. What do you want to do? I want you, I said. Really want you. Not because you're here or because it hurts Sarah or because I'm scared of being alone. I want to wake up one day and just want you. And if that day never comes, then at least we tried. She kissed me then, and it felt like resignation and hope in equal measure, like two people agreeing to keep walking into the dark together because turning back was worse than moving forward. The next morning, Natalie told me she'd gotten a job offer in Portland. Good money, great opportunity, exactly the kind of career move she'd been hoping for. She'd have to move in 3 months. Are you going to take it? I asked. I don't know. It depends. On what? On whether you want me to stay. And there it was, the question I'd been avoiding since the beginning. Did I want her to stay? Did I want to build a life with her? Or was I just holding on to avoid being alone? Was what we had real enough to sacrifice a career opportunity for? Or were we just two people who'd made each other feel less lonely for a while? I don't know, I said honestly. She nodded like she'd expected that answer. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. At least you're honest. She stood up, started getting dressed for work. I'm going to take it. The job. I'm going to go. When did you decide? Just now. When you said you don't know. Because I realized I do know. I know that I can't keep building a life around someone who's still figuring out if they want me there. That's not fair. You said you didn't love me either. You said. I said I don't know if you love me. That's different. She pulled on her shirt, and there were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. I do love you, Marcus. Or I'm starting to. And that terrifies me because I know, I've always known, that you're with me because I was there and because it hurt Sarah and because it was easier than being alone. Not because you chose me.
Nat.
It's okay. Really. I went into this with my eyes open. I knew what it was. I just hoped maybe it could become something more. But it hasn't. And staying here waiting for you to figure out if you want me feels like a different kind of settling. She left for work, and I sat in the empty apartment feeling like I just lost something I'd never really had in the first place. And the worst part was that she was right. About all of it. I hadn't chosen her. She'd been there, and I'd been broken. And we'd found each other in the debris of my marriage and called it love when it was really just survival. Over the next 3 months, we existed in a strange limbo. Natalie started packing, started saying goodbye to the city, to her clients, to the life she'd built here. And I watched her prepare to leave and did nothing to stop it because stopping her would have been selfish. Would have meant asking her to sacrifice her future for a relationship we both knew was built on shaky ground. Sarah reached out once more via email this time. A long, rambling message about accountability and growth and how therapy was helping her understand the patterns she'd fallen into. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask to be friends. She just shared where she was, like a progress report to a teacher she'd disappointed. I read it twice and then archived it without responding. There was nothing left to say. We'd all moved on in our own ways, carrying our damage like luggage we couldn't quite figure out how to set down. The day before Natalie left for Portland, we had dinner at the same wine bar where we'd first really connected. It felt appropriate, bookending this strange chapter with a return to where it began. Are you going to miss me? She asked. Yeah, I think I will. But not enough to ask me to stay.
No.
Not enough for that. She smiled sadly. At least you're honest. I learned it from you. Liar. You were always honest. You just pretended you weren't because being honest felt cruel. She raised her glass. To honesty, and to knowing when to walk away. We clinked glasses, and I felt the finality of it settle over us like fog. This was goodbye. Not dramatic, not tragic, just two people acknowledging that what they'd had was real but not enough. And that sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about knowing when to let go. Do you regret it? I asked. Any of it?
No.
I learned something important. What? That being someone's second choice is still being a choice. and I'm done being chosen by default. She reached across the table, touched my cheek. You're a good person, Marcus. You're going to figure yourself out eventually. And when you do, you're going to make someone really happy. Just not you. Just not me. We slept together one last time that night, and it felt like goodbye in a way that sex had never felt before. Tender and sad and final. And in the morning, she was gone. And I was alone in the apartment we'd shared, surrounded by the ghost of two relationships that had both ended in different kinds of failure. I spent the next year alone. Really alone, for the first time since I was in my 20s. No dates, no casual hookups, no attempts to fill the space Sarah and Natalie had left. Just me, figuring out who I was when I wasn't defined by who I was with or who I was losing. I went to therapy, started running, took a pottery class because it seemed like the kind of thing people did when they were finding themselves, and discovered I was terrible at it but enjoyed the mindless repetition. I had dinners with Jake, who'd stopped giving advice and just started listening. I visited my mom, who told me she'd never liked Sarah much anyway, and that Natalie had seemed troubled. Everyone's troubled, Mom, I said. Yes, but some people make their troubles your problem. Those are the ones you should avoid. She was probably right. She usually was. 18 months after Sarah first put her ring on the table and asked to be friends, I ran into Derek at a conference. He was a speaker talking about digital transformation or some other corporate buzzword salad, and I was there representing my company. We recognized each other immediately. We'd never met, but I'd seen photos, and apparently Sarah had shown him pictures of me. We ended up at the hotel bar after his talk, two men bound together by their mutual history with the same woman, drinking whiskey and trying to figure out what to say. She talks about you, Derek said finally. Still, about how you were the good one, how she fucked it all up. She say that. Not in those words, but yeah, that's the gist. He took a drink. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, for my part in it. I knew she was married. I pursued her anyway. That makes me an asshole. Yeah, it does. Does it help?
No, and I'm sorry. No.
But it's something. He laughed without humor. Fair enough. Why'd you leave her? I asked. At the end. What happened? Derek was quiet for a long moment. She wanted me to be you, or some version of you, the stable guy, the one who shows up. But that's not who I am. I'm the exciting guy, the affair guy. And once we were actually together, once it wasn't forbidden anymore, there was nothing left. We got bored. We got mean. It fell apart. He looked at me. She ever tell you about the car? What car? The night her car broke down. When you came to pick her up. My stomach tightened. What about it? There was nothing wrong with her car. She disconnected the battery terminal herself. She wanted you to come get her. Wanted to see if you still would. Test your commitment or some shit. He shook his head. That's when I knew she was never going to leave you. Not really. Not until she had someone lined up to replace every single thing you did for her. The revelation should have angered me. Should have felt like one more betrayal in a long line of them. But it just felt sad. Sad that she'd been so afraid of being alone that she'd orchestrated tests and backup plans and safety nets, turning love into a calculated risk management strategy. Thanks for telling me, I said. You deserve to know the truth. All of it. He stood up, dropped some cash on the bar. For what it's worth, I think you dodged a bullet. We both did. She's not a bad person. But she's not good at being alone. And people who can't be alone make everyone around them lonely. He left, and I sat there with my whiskey, turning his words over in my mind. People who can't be alone make everyone around them lonely. That had been Sarah. That had been me too, if I was honest. Both of us so afraid of emptiness that we'd filled it with anything available. Affairs, convenient relationships, the illusion of friendship when friendship was impossible. I finished my drink and went back to my hotel room, and for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Not happiness, not closure, just acceptance. Acceptance that some stories don't have clean endings. That some wounds don't heal, they just stop bleeding. That forgiveness isn't always possible, and maybe it isn't always necessary. 2 years after the divorce, I got a wedding invitation in the mail. Not from Sarah, from Natalie. She was getting married to someone she'd met in Portland, a photographer named James who looked kind in his photos, who smiled with his whole face. The invitation was simple, elegant, very her. She'd included a handwritten note. Marcus, I wasn't sure if I should send this, but it felt wrong not to. You were important to me, even if we were important to each other for the wrong reasons. I'm happy now. Really happy. The kind of happy that doesn't feel complicated or conditional. I hope you find that too. I don't expect you to come, but I wanted you to know I'm grateful for what we had. Even though it ended. You taught me what I don't want. And sometimes that's just as valuable as knowing what you do want. N. I didn't go to the wedding, but I sent a gift. A nice set of wine glasses from their registry, and a card that said, simply, congratulations. You deserve all the happiness. And I meant it. She did deserve happiness. We all did. Even Sarah, wherever she was, whatever life she'd built from the ashes of the ones she'd burned down. As for me, I'm still here, still alone, still figuring out what it means to be whole instead of half of something. I date sometimes, carefully, keeping things light because I'm not sure I trust myself to know the difference between love and convenience anymore. I go to therapy every other week. I have dinner with Jake. I visit my mom. I work on my pottery. I'm still terrible at it, but less terrible than I was. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Sarah and Natalie and Derek and all the ways we hurt each other while claiming we were being kind. I think about friendship and what it actually means, and whether it's possible to really be friends with someone you've loved, or if that's just another comfortable lie we tell ourselves to avoid the sharp edges of truth. I think about the night Sarah called me, sitting in her car outside Natalie's building, asking me to show up one more time. And I think about how saying no felt like the first honest thing I'd done in years. Not because it was kind, not because it was right, but because it was true. You don't get to be friends with someone you've destroyed. You don't get to keep their kindness after you've weaponized their love. And you don't get to demand comfort from the people you've hurt just because you've finally learned what loneliness feels like. Friendship doesn't mean money, or help, or comfort. It doesn't mean showing up just because someone needs you to. It means seeing someone clearly, choosing them anyway, and being honest enough to walk away when choosing them means losing yourself. Sarah taught me that. She taught me that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to let them use you. That boundaries aren't cruelty. They're just the space we need to breathe. That forgiveness isn't mandatory, and moving on doesn't require closure. I'm 38 now, still alone. Maybe permanently, maybe just for now. But I'm learning to be okay with it. Learning that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. That sometimes the only person you need to be friends with is yourself. And on quiet nights, when I'm sitting in my living room with a glass of wine and no one to share it with, I don't feel empty anymore. I feel clear. Like I've finally learned to read the data I was ignoring all along, to see the patterns I'd been trained to dismiss. Sarah texts me sometimes. Just small things, a funny meme, a song she heard that reminded her of something we used to do, questions about practical things like tax forms and insurance that she could easily Google. I don't respond anymore. Not out of anger, but because responding would be a lie, would be me pretending we're something we're not and never will be. We are not friends. We are not enemies. We are just two people who once loved each other badly and learned different lessons from the same pain. And sometimes that's the only ending that makes sense. Not dramatic, not satisfying, just true. I should have known from the beginning that you can't be friends with someone who taught you what betrayal tastes like. That some bridges burn so completely that rebuilding them would require becoming someone you're not. That the cruelest thing you can do to yourself is pretend that love and damage are interchangeable. That choosing to stay means the same thing as choosing to forgive. Sarah wanted a friend. I gave her a stranger who knew all her secrets. And in the space between what she wanted and what I became, we both learned that some endings don't heal, they just stop hurting. That's not the ending she wanted. It's not the ending I wanted either. But it's the ending we earned, together and apart, in that kitchen where she put her ring on the table and asked for the impossible. And now I'm here, alone in that same kitchen, and the impossibility feels like the only honest thing we ever shared.